Americans, what place in the US should tourists avoid? Story 1. Desert hiking trails in the summer. No, you cannot handle the heat. No, you did not bring enough water. Yes, someone could die. Answer. Seems like a good place to bring out the Passing Valley Germans. It's a long read, but worth it. Even if you have a map, don't go unless you know where you're headed and what's between you and your destination. Edit. The site above is now asking for a login. I've used this link for years, and this is new. Maybe the Reddit hug of passing? The irony of posting a great story to share with the world, only to slam the gates shut when the world comes to see. Story 2. Don't go to Las Vegas or Phoenix or anywhere near Passing Valley until October. If you do not hike. People die all of the time because they underestimate the heat. Answer. I've had plenty of friends go hiking at spots around Vegas that had full-on panic attacks at the thought of being lost while under the summer heat. If you actually get lost or go too far along without water, you can of course very easily die. Cell reception isn't a guarantee, and too much trust in Google Maps and your phone can have your lifeless body end up miles away from an actual trail or feet from one you didn't notice. Just driving around Nevada in the summer heat can be brutal. Now imagine, if you can, having any type of job that requires you to work outside the whole time, especially around superheated concrete and pavement. Absolute hell. Story 3. Everyone should come and see the national parks. They are truly the best thing our government has ever done. But for the love of your own life, do not go near the bison. They are not nice. Story 4. Don't go to Plymouth expecting Plymouth Rock to be some amazing piece of earth. It's not. Come to Plymouth, MA, for the bustling waterfront, and while you're walking by, check out the Rock, the Mayflower too, and just enjoy the area. Story 5. Unless you're from a very hot climate, do not engage in any outdoor recreational activities like running or hiking in drier, arid climates between April and November. Every year, there are local and national stories about European. For some reason, I feel like it's specifically German. IDK, why that would be. Tourists going for hikes in Arizona or California or Nevada in August, going missing, then turning up dead a few weeks later. It happens every year. The kind of heat we have in certain parts of this country is functionally indescribable unless you've grown up in it. It's worse than the Sahara, in certain parts. Passing Valley is the hottest place on the planet. It's called Passing Valley Fs. I have no idea why the hell people go there. That's not to say you can't be outside. Go to the Grand Canyon or the Painted Desert or the Everglades or the Bayou or the Salt Flats. Just for the love of God, don't hike there. Answer. I am a German. I moved to Austria in 2011. I lived at a place that was in the Alps and really close to the German border. You cannot imagine how often hikers needed a rescue from the mountains. Like 80 of it in winter. They go hiking when we have a stage 3 avalanche warning. They go hiking when we have a massive thunderstorm heading towards us. They go hiking in alpine areas in sandals or even ballerina shoes. The drive with summer tires when there is 1.2 meters of snow around them. And often when the Bergwacht, specialized rescue team, tells them to not move and wait, they move away. So I know that most of these tourists from your area are indeed Germans. Story 6. The White House. The Smithsonian is right next to it, well, across the park, and is 1,000 more worth your time. If you've arranged a tour inside the White House, do they even still do those? Then okay, sure, but otherwise you're just going to be mostly peering at a fence through a crowd, with a little bit of white visible through some trees. But the Smithsonian is something else. What are you interested in? They'll probably have an entire dedicated building full of that. If you were planning on spending a full day visiting the Smithsonian, then you're barely going to scratch the surface. Answer. Adding to my comment, I've seen an Apollo space capsule in both the London Museum in UK and the Smithsonian in USA, and the difference in vibe was fun. London Museum. Oh goodness! The Americans have entrusted us with one of their most precious national treasures. We must take the greatest care possible. Rope fences to keep everyone at the appropriate distance, polycarbonate barriers to protect it from touching if anyone leans past the ropes, no flashbulbs, enhanced security, everyone on best behavior. Deep breath. We can do this, chaps. Smithsonian. Check out a real Apollo space. Capsule. Put your grubby hands on it if you want. This chute blasted through 4,500 degrees plasma re-entry burn. It does not fear your fingers. The capsule door is right there and wide open. Jam your whole darn torso inside and look around. This thing was in space, yo. This is your heritage. Apollo capsule fudge. Yeah. I may be exaggerating a little, but the difference was noticeable. Story 7. Go to Times Square at night to see what it looks like for less than 30 minutes unless you are catching a Broadway show. Do not stop to eat. Do not stop to shop. Do not talk to anyone selling things or offering tours. Story 8. In LA, just skip Hollywood and kind of know it's way better for either a low-key chill kind of time or a nightlife scene. Trying to treat it like a compact sightseeing family vacation city will kind of suck because you're just driving around. Answer. So many people who have been to LA once think I'm a weirdo for loving a trip to LA. I've been a dozen times and always have a blast. When I ask where they stayed, every single time it's Hollywood. It's such a bad representation of the city and what makes it great. Venice, Culver City, Melrose Fairfax, Silver Lake, Los Feliz, Griffith, Koreatown. The list goes on and on. There's so much to do, see, and eat. Looking forward to my next LA visit. Story 9. 1. For all cities in the US, make sure you do research on the bad parts. Avoid those. 2. Memphis, TN. Answer. Reality is, most of the places in the US that tourists should avoid are also places that tourists wouldn't go anyway. Millions of tourists visit California every year from around the world. Very few of them plan on visiting Stockton. Countless tourists visit New York City. Few plan on taking in the sights at Hunts Point. Florida is a magnet for tourists. I'd guess that none have ever even heard of Belle Glade. Tourists tend to stick to the touristy, sight-filled areas, and those are nearly always safe. Worried about getting shot, stabbed, or beaten as a tourist? My advice is simple. Don't try to buy substances from street dealers or drive your rental car into any urban slums, and pull out your expensive cameras to take photos of the local wildlife. But that same advice could be applied to literally any major city in any nation around the world. Story 10. Atlantic City, NJ. It really is a pit and a shadow of its former self. Was just there last week. We were working our way up the coast. We paid for 2 days and nights in AC to do the boardwalk and beach thing. We left after one and just ate the cost of the second night. We were at the Bali Hotel and Casino. Room was nice. But the boardwalk was awful. Not much to do or see compared to other true beach towns, and we never felt safe. Security was non-existent in the hotel. A shadow showing at best. There were unmanned security points from the casino to the rooms. We found a homeless guy asleep in the hotel at the top of a 6-story elevator that comes directly from the boardwalk. He was in the elevator lobby, just chilling. We stepped around him and carried on. When we checked out early, they didn't even care to know why. Story 11. If traveling in July, August, or September, absolutely avoid Florida. That's peak hurricane season and the temperature ranges from 95, 115 F with 100 humidity. Story 12. Texas in the summer. The heat and humidity is something you have to prepare for if you go to Central or East Texas. West Texas will be drier, but the heat ramps up there as well. Houston. Restrict yourself to NASA and the Museum District. Galveston is a short drive, But I wouldn't do much there at night, and the muddy waters of the Gulf aren't going to fill you with joy. San Antonio is probably my favorite city to visit in Texas because of the culture, history, and the Riverwalk, as well as proximity to the hill country and natural areas of beauty. Story 13. I would second what others say about parks. Our wildlife isn't like European wildlife. It can and will end you. But what to avoid isn't what tourists should be concerned with. They should be concerned with the size. The US is very close to the size of Europe, East and West combined. You're not going to be getting pizza in NYC one day, drive to Miami the next day, and check out Los Angeles on the third day. New York City to Los Angeles is almost exactly the same distance as Paris to Moscow. Story 14. 1. Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's just a sidewalk with some tiles and people trying to part you from your money. 2. Times Square. It's a shopping mall with enough LED lighting to give you a seizure. Walking through it just once for the lighting is interesting, but there are almost no reasons to stop there. 3. Passing Valley. There are lots of good reasons to see the place, but too many of you seem to misunderstand. It's called that for a reason. 4. Niagara Falls. If you must, go to the Canadian side. Story 15. Hollywood. It's useless. It's crowded. It's douchey. No stars actually go there. Everything is overpriced knickknacks and overpriced adult beverage. LA has a lot to offer. Hollywood is not one of those things. Answer: Hollywood BLVD, by the Chinese Theater Walk of Fame, is gross. However, I absolutely love exploring the Hollywood Hills and parts of the Sunset Strip. They're iconic. Last year we drove through Laurel Canyon, hiked Runyon, went to the Rainbow, and spent time wandering around Forest Lawn Cemetery. Highly recommend this. It's huge and so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Very eerie. Lots of stars interred there. Maybe it's more of a quintessential LA experience rather than a Hollywood one, but close enough. Story 16. Houston. TX. If you're a tourist to the US, do you want to see nothing but concrete? Do you want to feel constant humidity regardless of time of year? Do you want to not be able to walk around with an overall sense of feeling safe and secure where you're at? Do you want to spend all of your time in a car while you're on vacation? Do you want to have to change your underwear more than once a day? If not, steer clear of Houston, TX. I don't care whether there are good restaurants there. You can eat Tex-Mex and Asian food generally anywhere. Answer: just on my way back home from a work visit to Houston. First time. Weird place. I was thinking it seemed so random and haphazard. Then a friend told me it has no zoning laws like most other cities. And so the mishmash of buildings and businesses and residences suddenly made sense. I did chuckle when I saw a strip mall sign listing both an all-you-can-eat restaurant and a weight loss center in the same location. Story 17. Times Square. Even us locals avoid it like plague. Don't eat at chain restaurants and eat at small businesses. There are also good places in the outer boroughs like Flushing. Katz's Deli is also too crowded. You can get the same type of pastrami at Sarge's Deli, 2nd Avenue Deli, or Pastrami Queen. I see many tourists go to Joe's Shanghai in Chinatown for soup dumplings and such, but there are other places. If you take the subway, don't refer to subway lines by color. They are either numbered, IRT, or lettered, BMT or IND lines. I see too many tourists take the N or Q trains at Canal Street and end up crossing the bridge into Brooklyn instead of the R or W trains going downtown. Story 18. Northern Michigan. It's awful and a complete waste of time. I just want my quiet and peaceful town back. Story 19. I'm from Long Beach, CA, a place famous for gang violence. I've never been more afraid walking around a downtown at night than I was in St. Louis. Story 20. You absolutely cannot handle exploring remote Alaska on your own. Find a guide, find some locals, book a tour guide. I live here and have 3 satellite Garmin devices, 2 handguns, bear spray, and a tote of layers and food I take with me everywhere. Most of Alaska does not have phone service. You have to have AirMed, and they have to be able to find you. This isn't somewhere to visit or move to on a whim. It sucks, and it's expensive, and people are not friendly. Story 21. If you'd like your rental car or, well, any car stolen for whatever reason, park it in Camden, NJ at night. Guaranteed gone by morning. You'll be dead as well, though, which kind of stinks. Story 22. Plymouth Rock. It's a random chunk of rock that's in a hole with railings around it, and it's not even really where they landed. Story 23. Thing with the US is just knowing the areas of whichever city you are going to. Atlanta is fine if you avoid the Bluff. San Francisco is fine if you avoid the Tenderloin. I would more ask, what do you want to see? It's a big country. Redwoods out west, Utah deserts, NYC, mountains in Colorado. Lots of options depending on what you are into. Story 24. Don't go to Yellowstone and expect that the animals are somehow tame and the land doesn't want to eliminate you. The puddles are at boiling temperature. The hot springs are made of boiling poison. All of the animals want to eliminate you. No, you can't pet the bison. No, you can't pet the elk. Those big tan kitties with the large jaws and huge claws are not big house cats. It's a fun place to go, just be aware. Everything will eliminate you if you mess with it. I had an elk scare the shoot out of me there once. You wouldn't think they're scary. But when you're standing in steam with boiling, puddles all around, you're 2 miles from the road on a trail, and there's an elk huffing at you from the woods, it gets scary. Also, carry way too much water in the desert. Don't think you can walk out. Have a topo map of the area and a compass. Also, in the winter, have sleeping bags and survival rations if you should end up in a blizzard if you're up north. You may be stuck for days. Also, never leave your car if you're stuck in the mountains. You can't bushwhack as the crow flies. You will absolutely die 1.5 miles from your car after walking for 2 days because you don't know the mountains and you're unprepared. I'm not worried about bad neighborhoods. We don't have pickpockets. Taxis don't scam you. The usual stuff doesn't really apply in the US. It's mostly the terrain and the weather that eliminate you. Yes, there are bad neighborhoods that aren't safe, but you've probably seen them in the movies. Just ask a local if it's safe to go to South whatever, and they'll advise. South whatever is usually the bad part of town, except towns where North whatever is the bad part. Just ask. Story 25. Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's basically a crowded sidewalk full of souvenir hustles, cracked stars, and underwhelming photo ops. You'll catch a more authentic slice of LA by spending that time at Griffith Observatory or exploring neighborhoods like Los Feliz instead. Story 26. Between late May and later September, do not come here to Arizona and go for a 10 a.m. hike. I don't care how experienced you think you are, absolutely do not do this. Multiple people, mostly EU tourists, die every year on the trails due to being severely underprepared to be in those conditions. Story 27. Avoid East St. Louis and Memphis. Little Rock can be sketchy as well. Pretty much any mid-sized city in the central US, maybe Google it before you get there. Story 28. OP, you should narrow down the region you want to visit, then go to the ask subs of the major cities. Rask Los Angeles, for example. Story 29. Have always heard Upper Idaho should be avoided due to the people who live there. Too bad as it looks nice. Story 30. I've spent my entire life in the US, and I've traveled fairly extensively throughout the country, and the absolute biggest disappointment I've ever seen is Hollywood Boulevard. I think people go in expecting glitz and glamour and spotting celebrities on every corner. That couldn't be further from the truth. It's sad, because there's a lot of history there, and there are a few things worth seeing, such as Mel's Diner, although that's technically just off Hollywood Boulevard, and Madame Tussauds. What it is now is run down, dirty, smelly, crowded, and downright dangerous. There are hawkers everywhere shilling cheap souvenirs. Spoiler alert, those t-shirts are $5 every day, not just today, and bogus celebrity tours. They're legally not allowed to solicit on the sidewalks. Oh, the irony. But the cops don't have anywhere near the resources or the interest to enforce it. I'm known to engage in hyperbole from time to time to make a story more interesting, but I say this without a trace of exaggeration. There are 2 things you should never do in Hollywood for your own safety. 1. Do not, and I cannot stress this enough, wander off the main drag after dark. I don't know what it is, but people in the area tend to get extremely stabby when the sun goes down. 2. Don't engage with the homeless population. Most of them are decent people who are just down on their luck, but more than a few are actually mentally disturbed to the point where they can and will hurt you if you get too close. On a similar note, don't go to Venice Beach. I've lived in Los Angeles for 12 years, and any first-timers who come to visit always beg me to take them to Venice. I have no idea why. I personally haven't seen any violence firsthand, although I did once walk past a bunch of 12-year-olds discussing buying slushies from one of the local shops with a stolen credit card. Also, I saw Andy Male body part sitting on a park bench with long, scraggly hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks, and who seemed stoned out of his mind. Maybe it's overly judgmental of me, but I wouldn't want to visit any place Andy Male body part frequents on his best day. Story 31. As someone who currently lives in Orlando, the theme parks, Disney, Universal, they can be fun, but they just get so busy and they've gotten so expensive. It's all one huge tourist trap. Story 32. Don't use Airbnb. They destroy neighborhoods. The locals dislike them, and they are often located in unsafe parts of town. Story 33. The hospital. No, seriously? Get travel medical insurance before you come here, and if you are anything but mortally wounded, take an Uber rather than an ambulance. Story 34. Don't listen to the haters. I'm an older white boy from Alabama. I love New Orleans, the old lady, and make an annual pilgrimage there every August. That is my town, those are my people. Go where you want. Go where the road takes you. Just pay attention to your surroundings and you will have a great time. Answer. There's so much to love in NOLA, but I especially appreciate that it has a precise, unique food scene. A lot of dishes that you simply will not get elsewhere. And those people party like they're coping with the state they live in, lol. But really, it's getting harder and harder to find very unique cultures in the US. NOLA seems to be one of those spots. Story 35. If you visit Seattle, avoid Pioneer Square and anything near Aurora Avenue. Stadium is okay if you're going to a game, but other than that, it's pretty much dead. Story 36. Times Square. I just don't get it. Why anyone visiting one of the greatest cities on Earth would go out of their way to visit a giant intersection and stand stuffed among the huge crowds of slowly walking people, surrounded on all sides by thousands of bright advertisements and chain restaurants, is way beyond me. Story 37. Passing Valley. So many tourists go there expecting to drive through in a few hours and bring like 3 water bottles. They get severely dehydrated and there are lots of stories of deaths. It's a huge area, over 3.5 million acres. You can not drive, though, in one day. And even if you're just driving in and out, you need 2 gallons of per person a day in the summer. Don't go. There are other deserts in the US that are safer and far more beautiful. Story 38. If you can understand and abide by basic pictographic signs, stay out of our national parks, especially Yellowstone. The amount of damage done by tourists, both foreign and domestic, is absolutely silly. And that's not even getting into the Darwin Awards people like to compete for. Because your moose is super friendly, and the active sulfur field never collapses in on itself. Story 39. Kayaking on your own without a guide on the Great Lakes, particularly Superior, Michigan, and Huron. There is an old story of a German merchant mariner coming through the Sioux Locks, bound for Duluth, in the 1900s, who said something to the effect of, "I don't understand all the fuss about this lake. After all, it is just a lake." On his return to the Sioux outbound to Halifax, he contacted the locks operators and said just a few brief words, "A darn big lake." For those who don't know, from personal guiding kayaking trips on Superior, a day with waves that don't exceed 3 feet is considered calm. 3 foot. Waves are enough that you won't be able to see anyone else with you, as their torso will be shorter than the wave height. The Great Lakes are fudge insane. If you see dunes or cliffs, i.e. pictured rocks and Apostle Islands, there are waves that have been large enough to go from where the water level normally is to the tops of the cliffs and dunes. Battle Island Lighthouse in Ontario, for instance, had all its windows broken in the same storm that sank the Edmund Fitzgerald. The Battle Island Lights Tower stands over 110 over the water. Story 40. Best and worst simultaneously. Yellowstone. If you can't stay on the marked paths or keep a respectable distance from the wildlife, you're going to have a very bad day. At best, you can get fined by the park rangers. At worst, you can fall into a caldera or get smashed by a bison. Story 41. The Space Needle is much cooler from the outside. The restaurant at the top is way overpriced. Everything around the Needle is worth your time, though. Story 42. Do not stay in any hotels near an airport. In no city in the U.S. is the area around an airport a good place for tourists to stay. Fast food near the airport is also not something you need to consume. When you get to a city, ask the locals where to eat and where to stay. Story 43. Gino and/or Pat Steaks in Philadelphia. Nothing but grease on a roll. Taste is blah, and the workers are asshats. Story 44. Unpopular opinion. Certain tourist places are geared exclusively for American tourists. I would imagine non-Americans would strongly dislike these places. Examples: Gatlinburg Pigeon Forge, Wisconsin Dells, Branson, Gulf Shores, Destin, Panama City Beach. We had a COVID wedding outside Gatlinburg in the mountains, and honestly, I would never ever go back to Pigeon Forge. Not too familiar with similar places elsewhere in the US. Does anyone else have examples of these ugly hyper-commercialized hellscapes? Answer: Destin being on this list is surprising to me. I'm familiar with 57 of the places you listed, and Destin is absolutely beautiful. Small town coastal feel. Pensacola is way worse. Destin feels like a gem. I went parasailing there. I can say that Scranton, PA isn't worth visiting though. Yeah, it's known for The Office. Is it worth visiting? Nope, LOL. Honestly, a foreigner should probably avoid PA in general. An American can enjoy the historical parts, the food, and the Amish country, but there's so many weird cultural things about all of it that it's nowhere near top 10 states for a foreigner to visit. One underrated place you should visit? Chicago. It's consistently voted one of the best cities in the US for summer. Urban farmers markets, Taste of Chicago, all the museums, the Riverwalk, tons of concerts both indoors and outdoors, big artists and small, every weekend. Plus, all your basic tourist traps like the Bean, the Sears Tower, Navy Pier, North Beach, Michigan Ave. Tons of conventions to attend year-round. And the crime is so overrated unless you make a point to go to a sketchy area, which, why would you? You'll be perfectly fine. It's a shame the connotation, BC the food, the community and the culture is so rich. Story 45. Gary, Indiana. I think it's like a Stranger Things thing. Gary is the down under of America, or what Frodo sees when he puts on the ring. Story 46. If you come and visit with the idea of, hey, I'll just drive from NYC to LA, it'll be a short trip. Yeah, don't do that. Story 47. Do not go hiking in a desert area during the hot months. Do not ever go alone if you go. Take too much water. Take a charged phone. I would say go in the late fall winter. If you aren't in shape, don't do it. Just don't. It's unbelievably dangerous. Story 48. New Orleans in the summertime. It's like a wet, hot blanket over your face. It's hard to breathe in that level of heat and humidity if you aren't used to it. Story 49. Currently vacationing in Vegas. If you don't have money, don't come here. 7 for a fudge water bottle. You'll fudge need it if you walk outside in 115F weather. Story 50. As many people are saying, there are a lot of things in the US that can eliminate you passing valley. Alligators, bears, cougars, etc. I remember having a snack atop a waterfall in Yosemite and talking to some Dutch tourists. They were letting their toddler play near one of the squirrels, and I mentioned she shouldn't get too close as they carry the plague. The woman laughed, and I had to explain that indeed many critters in the western U.S. carry bubonic plague. She grabbed her baby and just looked shocked and thanked me for telling her. Story 51. Passing Valley. You'd think people would get the name, but surprisingly no. People still go out there with hardly any water and think they can make it. You can't. There is a reason why it's called Passing Valley. Not Life Valley, not Happy Valley. Passing. By God, the number of absolute morons that think they can conquer Passing Valley with nothing more than a small cooler astounds me. Story 52. As an American that has been to every city, I can't imagine any tourist enjoying a visit to Houston, especially in the summer. Story 53. When you're on the train from Newark International Airport, the largest international airport for NYC, it's easy to get off at Newark Penn Station instead of New York Penn Station, especially if the conductor just mumbles over the intercom. Very different places. Story 54. Since Plymouth Rock has already been mentioned, I'll say just avoid Plymouth in general. Also in Massachusetts, avoid Salem between the last week of September and the second week of November. It's worth a visit the rest of the year. Story 55. Hollywood and Vine, very bad. Go to Universal Studios instead. The big NPS parks are great for many reasons, but tour buses suck. Go to a National Historic Site with living history, and you'll get a more personal tour. Most bad experience can be cured by always getting a local guide. Flat out. Old buddy, internet friends, a colleague, partner, team member. Nearly any American would be delighted to take you on their tour of the best of their area. And then, things don't suck. You are family. Story 56. I'm thinking pretty much that entire area marked by our borders on the map are a good place to avoid these days. Story 57. The airports. This is treated as a relatively lawless zone, so visitors from other countries may be mistreated. Story 58. Right now, everywhere. Never know if you don't have a favorable skin tone, you could be immediately arrested. I wouldn't put it past TSA. I was anxious coming back to my own country, and I'm white and transgender, but like not majorly noticeable ATM. Story 59. I would avoid the US completely while the orange dictator is in charge, but I do hear he has a condition that leads to heart failure, so here's hoping. Story 60. All right. Everybody's either giving you a political answer or an answer based on their preferences. I'm pretty well traveled. I've spent significant time in 43 states and lived in 4. That was honestly nowhere I wouldn't go right now in the US, but there are areas within most cities where I would not go. So you have to check with your hotel if there are areas you should stay away from within each city. But I've always been one to find something interesting to do, no matter where I am. So while I would not prioritize most of the Midwest, that doesn't mean you can't be cool places there and fun. Things to do. The one thing I would take heed of is the safety lectures you're getting from people about things like heat in the summer in Arizona, or passing valley or altitude in the mountains of Colorado. A lot of people don't realize how wild our wild lands can be, and that you can get yourself into serious trouble, including passing, because you haven't brought enough water on the hiking trip in the desert. Yeah, it happens every single year. So wherever you go, pay attention to what the locals tell you about how to be prepared for what you want to do, particularly if you venture out hiking or outside of the city. We know what we're talking about. Other than that, I am confident that wherever you choose to visit, you will find some beautiful sights and interesting things to do, and that goes for almost every place I've seen listed here as a don't go. Story 61. I say this as someone who has traveled all over the US. Don't set a fudge toe in Memphis. Memphis is what the media wants you to believe that Chicago is. It's the only place where I have truly feared for my safety. If someone came to me and said they'd pay my way for the rest of my life, provided I live in Memphis, I'd immediately say no. Story 62. Memphis. Just trust me. Drive by the pyramid, over the Mississippi, donate to St. Jude's, but skip Memphis. Story 63. Idaho. Even Montanans drive as quickly through the panhandle as possible. Source. Lifelong Washington state resident. Idaho is simply the white nationalist state I have to get through to get to Montana. As a teenager in the 90s, I was well aware that northern Idaho is where the white nationalists made themselves at home. Story 64. Anywhere the buffalo roam. Yellowstone National Park. It is not a petting zoo. Bison have gored reckless humans. Hot springs are hot. They will melt your skin right off, and it will hurt the whole time you're dying. There are danger signs all over the park if you go. Read them. Story 65. Honestly, right now, I feel people should not be coming to America as tourists. I've read multiple articles about tourists being detained by ICE. There doesn't seem to be much of a formula for who gets swept up, although the majority of people ICE has targeted are Spanish-speaking or melanated, but definitely not only or all. I wouldn't trust us. Come back after we're done without Holocaust do-over. Fun fact. Hitler first tried to deport undesirables to various parts of the world before deciding that was not going to work. Story 66. With the possibility that you could get pulled at the border and shipped to some other country across the globe now, I'd say stay home. Story 67. Long drives across Iowa can be pretty long and boring. Otherwise, it's a good country to visit. Don't let our politicians scare you. There's much to see and do here. Story 68. The U.S. is huge. There's a lot of places to avoid, and others not worth going to. If you're planning a trip, you'd be better off prioritizing what you want to see, though, and planning from that. If you want to visit more than one location, you're more likely to have problems with travel time than anything else. Did you ask because of a specific concern? Because being specific will get you better answers than this random generic question. Story 69. Niagara Falls. Yes, the falls are cool. A lot of water, quite huge. Everything around the falls is a complete dump with a scuzzy casino, and around that, burned-out semi-dangerous ghetto you have no business being in. It's a masterclass in failed urban renewal policies, and the most embarrassing reminder that New York doesn't give a shoot about anything upstate. If you do go, just hit the Maid of the Mist, the 2 viewpoints in the state park, and get out. Or go to the far nicer Canadian side. Story 70. If you were wanting to see the Rockies and visit Utah, prepare that the liquor stores are closed on Sundays. I work in a hotel, and that 95 of tourist complaints were just that liquor store was closed. Story 71. Honestly, this question isn't really suited for the whole country. Places you should avoid in one of the biggest countries on Earth. This might be better if the question was, I'm going to California. I have a few days in LA, San Francisco, and San Diego. Where should I avoid? The US is just so expensive and dynamic. It's like asking where in Western Europe American tourists should avoid. Anyways, to actually answer the question, avoid going to any place you see in the news in a negative light for sure. Don't go to Old Block or Compton, for example. Pay attention to extremes in survivability. You don't drive north of Fairbanks in the winter, or hike into Passing Valley in the summer, or ever really. Consider that you do not have free healthcare or rescue here either, and act accordingly. Also, consider tipping, low L. Lots of tourists come across and don't tip. It is literally part of our wages here in many cases. If you have questions about a region, landmark, city, state, attraction, or general area, I'm sure plenty of US folks would love to chime in. Okay. Story 72. That's so subjective. What are you trying to avoid? A type of temperature weather? Famous things that are overrated? Certain political views? Density? Rural areas? Places with uninspired restaurant scenes? The US is huge, and you're going to get a bunch of unhelpful responses without more context. Story 73. Hollywood. It's a cesspool these days, filthy, overrun by homeless people and costumed people trying to grift your money away. No, you won't see actors walking around Hollywood. Skip the huge cities and do small-town America and the state and national parks and beaches instead. Story 74. Gary, Indiana. Everyone should avoid Gary, Indiana. We drove through it today and my daughter yelled, "Oh, who farted?" Story 75. Can I just say what to do? Check out the cities that don't get as much coverage. Think Columbus, Ohio, St. Louis, MO, Little Rock, Arkansas, Austin, Texas, Minneapolis, Michigan, Buffalo, NY. Many of the lesser-known towns are much less tourist trap-ish. You may just encounter genuine Americans, not on vacation, but in their own neighborhood hangouts and restaurants. A lot of